The Israeli Prime Minister is feeling triumphant since his successful first White House meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. In fact, he's even borrowing a phrase from the Republican leader to describe the summit, saying that a new day has dawned on Israeli-American relations. During his first briefing to the Israeli cabinet since returning to Jerusalem, the premier updated his ministers on all important talks in the Oval Office. Netanyahu says the two leaders reached consensus on a number of hot-button issues, including further Israeli settlement construction in the West Bank.
הסכמנו להקים צוותים כדי לשדרג את כל התחומים המרכזיים ביחסים בין ישראל לארצות הברית, בתחום של הביטחון, בתחום של המודיעין, בתחום של הסייבר, בתחום של הטכנולוגיה, בתחום של הכלכלה, בתחומים רבים אחרים. וכן הסכמנו להקים גם צוות במקום שעדיין לא הגענו אליו להסכמה, אני מתכוון כמובן לנושא ההתיישבות ביהודה ושומרון. גם על כך אנחנו נדון.
At a joint news conference with Netanyahu in Washington, Trump publicly urged the Israeli leader to curb settlement construction. But the new president also backed away from a U.S. commitment to a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has been the long-standing bedrock of Washington's Middle East policy. Far-right members of Netanyahu's coalition have been emboldened by Trump's suggestion that he's open to new ways to achieve peace, not necessarily entailing the creation of a Palestinian state that's been considered a benchmark of American policy for decades.
אני חייב לציין שבסיום המפגש עם הנשיא הוא לחץ את ידי והגדיר את היחסים בין ישראל לארצות הברית כיום חדש, a new day. ואני חייב להגיד לכם, יש פה יום חדש, הוא יום טוב.
Hello and welcome to ILTV's Evening Update. I'm Aaron Porras here with the latest news from Israel.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to arrive tomorrow in Australia, where he will face opposition from some 60 prominent anti-Israel activists protesting the visit. According to the Australian newspaper The Age, business and religious leaders, lawyers, academics, entertainers, and former politicians have joined forces to oppose Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Australia, saying his policies provoke, intimidate, and oppress the Palestinian people and are pushing the Middle East further from peace. The protesters include anti-Semitic organizations that support the terrorist group Hamas and its dictatorship over Gaza. Protests against Netanyahu's visit are scheduled in Melbourne, Canberra, and Sydney after he arrives there on Wednesday. This will be the first ever visit by an Israeli Prime Minister to the country. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and Netanyahu are set to sign agreements on technological innovation and research and development, providing a framework for scientists, engineers, and businesses to cooperate. An upcoming presidential executive order on religious freedom has led some 20 Jewish Democratic members of the House to write a letter to the White House urging Trump not to sign the initiative. The presidential order would allow federally funded, faith-based organizations to discriminate against people they believe act in a manner inconsistent with their religious beliefs and values. The proposed executive order is intended to cater to the wishes of conservative Christian groups that wish to bypass anti-discrimination laws because their religious beliefs, as well as those of some Orthodox Jewish organizations, prohibit same-sex marriage, premarital sex, abortion, and transgender identity. The letter was endorsed by several Jewish groups including the Anti-Defamation League, American Jewish World Service, Bend the Ark, Keshet, Truah, and the National Council of Jewish Women. The Shin Bet security agency has arrested 2 minors for a shooting attack last month and in December in the West Bank, in an operation carried out in coordination with the IDF and police. According to the Shin Bet, 2 17-year-old Palestinians from the West Bank village of Deir Abu Mashal carried out the shooting attacks on December 14th and January 27th against Israeli vehicles not far from the village of Haramish. No one was injured in either of the attacks. The 2 were arrested several hours after the January attack, and the Shin Bet found 2 Carlo Gustav improvised guns, which were found to match the bullets found at the scene of the attacks. It was further discovered that the 2 were involved in other attacks. The Binyamin Regional Council in Judea and Samaria transferred over 11 million shekels to illegal outposts within its jurisdiction between 2008 and 2014, according to a report in Haaretz. Using budgets available to regional councils for investments in infrastructure, public funds were used for developing such infrastructure and construction in several illegal outposts. The NGO Peace Now will shortly publish its findings that show the extent of regional council involvement in financing such illegal outposts. According to Chagit Ofran, who is part of the Peace Now team monitoring settlements in the West Bank, Matem Binyamin is just one example. She said this is only the part that was uncovered, but that there is clearly a whole system whereby illegal outposts are funded by these councils, while the government turns a blind eye, letting it proceed. Israel more than doubled its investments in Mexico last year as 2016 investments reached a record of $2 billion. This makes Israel the fourth largest source of foreign investments in Mexico after the United States, Spain, and Germany. Despite the strong economic ties, Israeli-Mexican relations were thrown into turmoil recently after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted support for US President Donald Trump's plan to build a wall on the United States-Mexican border. Despite the ensuing fallout, the Israeli Prime Minister assured reporters that Israel and Mexico will, quote, continue to have good relations.
When it comes to occupied Palestine, there are plenty of facts to prove that the occupying regime of Israel has pursued a policy which violates international law for its own gain, especially when it comes to land. And its biggest ally, the U.S., has aided this process, especially when it comes to using its veto at the UN. In this edition of the debate, we will discuss Palestine, what other Arab nations like Saudi Arabia have not done to support Palestinians, and what Iran is doing to help Palestinians achieve their rights. Our guest joining us for this edition of the debate, from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Mick Napier joins us right here in the studios in Tehran. And we have author, historian, and political commentator, Jeffrey Alderman, who joins us from London. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both, and let me first start with you, Jeffrey Alderman, from London. And I'd like to start by, in a sense, the parting words of the former U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. If you remember, for 2 hours he spoke about Israel and Palestine. And it was the first time that he said Israel risks becoming, first time that a U.S. official actually spoke in this way about Israel, that Israel risks becoming an apartheid state if peace talks fail. And he said that the term apartheid to be used in the context of Israel was the first time that was used. What was your reaction to that speech by John Kerry using that word?
Well, my reaction was that this was sour grapes by a Secretary of State who had been singularly unsuccessful in moving peace along by 1 centimetre. John Kerry is now history, and we have a new administration whose style of government and whose style of public relations is radically different from that which the American people have been used to in the past. One thing that I noticed that has been much underreported is that within the past 2 weeks, the Trump State Department has in fact issued a document recognizing Jerusalem as within Israel. I brought part of the document here with me. I don't know whether you can see that on the camera. It's an astonishing document, and this is the way the Trump administration works. So from the point of view of some rapprochement between Palestinians and Israelis, I'm afraid the future looks to me to be, in view of what the Trump administration has said, very bleak indeed.
Well, isn't that part of the problem, Mick Napier? Of course, your reaction to Jeffrey Alderman, but the fact that the U.S. Has to be a party to dictate, perhaps, the way that this process is supposed to go. After all, it should be, even Trump has said, it should be between Palestinians and Israel, but yet you have the U.S. pushing in favor of Israel.
Well, it's as clear as a nose on my face that President Obama was the most pro-Israel U.S. president there's ever been. His parting gift to the Israelis, while the wave of ethnic cleansing continues inside the whole of historic Palestine, was a $38 billion arms aid package. Donald Trump wishes to outdo Obama, to be even more pro-Israeli than he was. And what that means is effectively to endorse Netanyahu's program, and the program of elements in the Israeli government further to the right than Netanyahu, elements who espouse openly genocidal language, to complete the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which Mr. Alderman supports, which has been going on since 1948, every week without exception, and is now being accelerated. I mean, I've driven on Jewish-only roads in the West Bank, from which Palestinians are excluded. The idea that this is not apartheid makes the use of the very word ridiculous. So yes, back to the USA. The move by Trump to see Jerusalem as a capital of Israel is giving the green light to Netanyahu to accelerate, without even the fig leaf that Obama and Kerry asked Israel to wear, to accelerate and to complete the ethnic cleansing of Palestine.
A new report shows the amount of weapons being bought and sold around the world is growing. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the number of major weapons transfers over the past 5 years is on par with the end of the Cold War. The Independent Institute researches conflict, armaments, arms control, and disarmament. It keeps a running database of weapons transfers using government resources, industry reports, and media outlets. Of the more than 100 countries it studied from 2012 to 2016, it found the U.S. exported 1/3 of all major weapons moved. Roughly half of those weapons from the U.S. went to the Middle East. Experts told CNN instability in the region and the rise of ISIS likely helped increase sales. Since 2012, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have been the biggest U.S. customers. A researcher told Al Jazeera both countries are using advanced weapons to intervene in Yemen's civil war. The amount of money the U.S. makes off weapons exports depends on who's buying them. Most countries pay for the imported arms themselves, but some, like Israel, receive funding from the U.S. that's then used to buy American weapons.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is urging NATO member countries to meet their defense spending targets. Speaking at the NATO headquarters in Brussels on Monday, Pence pointed out that President Trump wants real progress in terms of defense spending, as some members have failed to keep up with their commitments.
The President of the United States and the American people expect our allies to keep their word and to do more in our common defense.
On this President's Day holiday, thousands of demonstrators are taking to the streets to voice their opposition to Donald Trump as the nation's 45th president. Rallies dubbed Not My President Day took place in major U.S. cities, including Chicago, Atlanta, here in Washington, D.C. And in New York City, thousands of protesters waving flags lined up outside in Central Park. It's there we find RT's Caleb Maupin.
We're here near Central Park. Trump Tower is also nearby, and thousands of people have taken to the streets here in the center of Manhattan to protest against Donald Trump. Now, today is the federal holiday of President's Day, and these protesters, they're calling it Not My President's Day and saying that they reject Donald Trump's presidency. We see a lot of signs around a lot of different issues, people highlighting comments that Donald Trump has made about women, people highlighting the allegations about a relationship with Russia, a lot of different things being said here.
I think there needs to be an investigation of this whole Russia connection. We need to see his taxes. Yeah, there's a lot that he's afraid to share with people.
Why do you think that millions of Americans voted for him?
I think not that they're just uninformed, I think, and I don't know, I think that there's two different I guess, ideas between the middle America and the outer cities, and I think that if everybody opened their minds a little bit more and saw what was actually happening and paid attention and educated themselves, I don't think that that would be a problem.
It's 45 in the symbol of a swastika.
What's the significance of 45?
Donald Trump's the 45th president of the United States.
Do you think Trump should be impeached?
Absolutely.
And, I mean, how would that go about? Like, what do you see the charges being in a Trump impeachment, et cetera?
I think that this Senate Intelligence Committee investigation into Donald's collusion with Russia will be very interesting to see how that unfolds.
Now, this protest is intended to go on for several hours, and thousands of people are here. From what we understand, the Democratic Party and a number of their forces have called people out.
Show me what